Hey, brother.
Hey, Al. How's
Hey.
it going?
So good. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm glad. If you are watching this video, we're trying to change some things up. We are trying to make a studio a little bit. It's going to be slow progression to actually make a studio, but so it's kind of exciting. And if you are watching, we are going to start trying to add in images and different media while we talk about it throughout the story. So you can kind of follow along that way. But if you haven't yet, please rate us, comment, like, all the things.
Follow us on TikTok.
TikTok. Blake's a TikToker now.
No.
Siblings in Crime Pod.
I think so.
Siblings in Crime Pod on TikTok and Instagram. And so we're going to be up on YouTube figuring out how to get our videos up there now. So we're on every platform just about, trying to be. So go find us there.
Yes.
But yeah, welcome back to another episode of Siblings in Crime. I'm Allie Rosso.
And I'm Blake Murphy.
And just as it sounds, we are siblings who love true crime.
Love it.
Love it. And this case has some twists and turns, so you're going to need to keep your thinking cap on. Pay attention. But before we get into it, how was your week?
My week was good. I flew,
Nice.
which is not normal for me. I went to South Dakota, Sioux Falls.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, captain was nice. It was a good flight. And yeah, might fly again this week, and then might fly again on Sunday. So
Busy.
yeah, but we'll see.
Big flyer.
Yeah, houses are coming along nicely, and yeah, it's been good. What about you? Actually, we got a security camera monitoring system, so that we can keep the homeless people out of our
So sad.
out of our triplex. They keep trying to break in and use the water and the laundry, which I feel bad, but they break stuff when they come in.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
they
tough.
Yeah, so it's we have to lock things down, and then they break a gate open. It's
Oh, gosh.
yeah, it's just a headache.
Well, it sounds like you're figuring it out.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I know you're talking about security dogs. I'm like, that's crazy that there's even a company that has security dogs.
Yeah, they drop their dogs off at night, and the dogs are there through the night, and then they pick them back up in the morning.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, it's expensive though, but we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm scared that they're gonna bite someone or
Liability.
yeah, they're gonna get out and bite a kid or something. But
That'd be scary.
yeah.
Well, sweet. We are now on episode 20, and I'm so excited about that.
Action.
What?
I don't know. You were in action.
Oh. And if memory serves me well, I think only 1% of podcasters make it to episode 20 before they give up. So we're actually killing it.
Yeah, we're in the top 1%.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big deal. This is a big episode for us.
Yeah.
For me, this week, things have
Don't
been...
care.
Oh, I'm going to tell you anyways. This week has been great. Just got back in town again. And this weekend we're going to a wedding. And then on Sunday we're going to Montana. So some fun things coming up. But really all not that exciting at the same time. So we'll move on.
Okay.
Let me ask you, Blake.
Yes.
When is the last time that you were on Craigslist, of all things?
I don't know. 10 years ago. I don't think I've been on Craigslist almost ever.
I feel like I haven't even heard about it in so long. Or no one talks about it nowadays. Yeah, in the early 2000s, it wasn't an uncommon place, though. Mm-hmm. People were, shopping. I think you can even find, roommates or apply to jobs. I think there was even a dating, personal ads section. Mm-hmm. That has been done away, though, for rightful reasons, I imagine. But in today's story, a common theme occurs for multiple men across the country. A job ad appears online, simple, anonymous, promising peace, pay, and a place to stay. It's everything a down-on-their-luck man might need because it's a fresh start in a remote place. Little did they know applying to this job would be the last decision these chosen applicants would ever make. No witnesses, no security cameras, just a trail of missing persons and one survivor crawling out of the woods with a bullet in his arm. This is the story of a killer hiding behind kindness and the men who answered a call they never returned from. This is the case of the Craigslist Killer.
Dang, that's crazy. I feel like there's always killers that are like super nice and normal feeling, and then killers that are like terrifying and scary.
There's
like two
it's on
sides.
one, it's either dramatic in both ways. Either like the nicest guy in the world you never guess, or it was obvious from the start, like it's for sure John down the street.
That guy probably killed some people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is going to be our case today. You ready to get into it?
I'm ready.
All right, let's roll. Ralph Geiger was the first to disappear. He wasn't someone who kept in close contact. He was in his mid-50s, a bit of a drifter. He'd bounced around Ohio for years, picking up odd jobs, living simply, but even still, when people stopped seeing him that summer, it still felt a little off. He told a few folks he found a good place to live, and he had limited cell service, so if he didn't get back to them for a while, don't be alarmed. And then he was gone. He didn't say goodbye, there was no paper trail, he just disappeared. And most people chalked it up to Ralph just being Ralph, but others weren't so sure. By October, another man went missing. David Powley, he was 51, had told his sister he was heading to Ohio for a job. Also, our mom swears everyone is murdered in Ohio. It seems like Ohio is typically a common theme.
Don't talk bad about Ohio.
But we love Ohio State, so we would never say anything bad. Same kind of deal. It was rural property that he was promised, free room and board, light work, decent pay. He was excited, said it sounded like kind of like a peaceful new beginning he was hoping for. And so on his way out to Ohio, he had left Virginia, left his things back there, took minimal things. On his way, he stopped in a hotel, made his last call to his sister, saying it's a remote area. Probably won't hear from me all that much. I'm really excited about this job opportunity. I'll call you when I can. That was the last time anyone saw him.
Also, whatever this guy's doing, it's prime because they don't have good cell service.
Right. So you have bad cell service.
No
and
cameras.
And it's just these guys who are like already kind of a loner type.
It's supposed to be not reaching out and calling their friends and family.
Exactly. Knowing David would take some time to adjust, a month had passed by with no communication. It didn't seem odd, obviously, at the time, but concern began to grow as time stretched on. However, that concern quickly grew to panic when David's sister saw the news plastered on every channel that authorities had discovered a shallow grave in a wooded stretch of Noble County. Immediate identification wasn't published, but to David's sister, she didn't need them to say a name. She didn't need to say anything because she knew that was her best friend and brother that laid in that grave. Family intuition kicked in, leading her to filing a missing persons report. It took little time to get the call back that the body inside was David's. He was shot execution style.
Dang.
His wallet was still on him, and there was no suspects and no clear motive.
Dang, that's crazy. Also, Noble County is not really close to Columbus.
Thank heavens.
So we're good.
So we're in the clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of close, but not really. Anyways.
Well, this is all happening back to back to back. And then it happened again. Just a few weeks later, Timothy Kern, he was only 47, told his family he'd accepted a new job. His life hadn't been easy lately. He was recently laid off. He was trying to get back on his feet. He said the offer came just at the right time. And this was his second chance. He was a little hesitant because he did have grown kids that he wanted to live nearby, but he still took the offer. He said goodbye to his children, and with uneasy excitement for this new life, he left his father's home on November 13th. So 3 days later, Tim's body was found behind an abandoned mall in Akron. Same signature. Akron. Thank you. Same signature, shallow grave, single bullet wound, no robbery, no answers. We have 3 men, 2 found bodies, 1 missing.
That's weird because Akron's kind of far from Noble County, too. It's like the same distance from Akron as it is to
Columbus?
Like Columbus and Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh just as far.
All right, so the scopes. Maybe this is why they're not drawing any lines initially.
Yeah.
Like I said, 3 people said that they were leaving to Ohio for this. 2 dead, 1 missing. The towns where these men had lived or passed through grew uneasy. People started glancing at strangers, keeping their doors locked even during the day. Was it someone targeting the vulnerable? Were these personal assassinations or just completely random? As these questions were piling up, nobody had really any real leads, which makes sense, I guess, if you were saying they're all kind of distanced out. Literally no evidence really left at the scene besides the bullet itself. Until one cold morning, a man stumbled out of the woods. He was shot, bloodied, and barely able to speak out of shock and fear, but he was alive.
Where was it?
And he knew exactly who had tried to kill him.
Oh, dang.
We're going to go into this. In need of medical attention, Scott Davis was taken to get his injuries treated, and just as quickly he got questioned by authorities. Of course, he just got shot. He's in the hospital. Cops are coming up immediately. Scott recounted the ordeal, providing detailed descriptions of the events leading up to the attack. With vivid memory, Scott laid out his last 24 hours. And this is the account. It was the morning of November 6, 2011, the day before my birthday, in Noble County, Ohio. The morning air was crisp as Scott Davis, 48 years old, arrived at a restaurant in Caldwell, Ohio, to meet a man who had offered him a job. The position promised $300 a week and free housing on a 688-acre farm.
Probably normal for Ohio, though.
That's a good point. I was like, that sounds gigantic, but I guess that makes sense why it needs a caretaker. Mm-hmm. A fresh start for Davis, who had recently moved from South Carolina back to Ohio. He was greeted by a man introducing himself as Jack.
Bolton.
Hilarious. Our family friend. As Jack, and a teenager he referred to as his nephew. After a brief conversation, they invited Davis being Scott Davis, to accompany them to the property to see the farm. So they meet at this restaurant. They're like, okay, he seems like a good applicant. 3 of them hop in a car. Now they're heading out to the farmland. As they drove to a remote wooded area, Scott noted the isolation, but remained hopeful about the opportunity. That's actually one reason why all these men were so enticed to go out, is that it was remote and it was out in the middle of nowhere.
Some peace and quiet.
Yeah, it sounds nice. Upon arriving, Jack suggested they walk a short distance to view the property. Scott led the way, with Jack following closely behind. As Scott recounted, he said, quote, "I heard a curse word and a gun cock, and I knew I was in trouble." Davis said he had...
It's crazy they just do it right away.
Yeah.
Like, right,
walking out, and he hears like, oh, F, and it's like, and the gun, there was like no bullets in that round.
Yeah.
And
it jammed.
Yeah, it was jammed. Scott Davis said he managed to knock the weapon away, but it happened all at once. He knocks the gun, he turns to run, and a shot rang out, striking Scott Davis in the right elbow. In a surge of adrenaline, he turned and fled into the dense woods with bullets whizzing past him.
Jeez.
This would be terrifying. Like, oh, I'm just going out, going to take a look in these woods.
They're like, lead the way. Pop.
I know. He's like 2 steps in. Yeah. How terrifying.
Like,
you hear like the click. Like, how lucky is Scott? Like, that's like literally the most incredible. That'd be so scary. I don't know how I'd react in that situation, but the fact that he like smacked the gun and bolted, I'm like, yeah, that's brave. He was running and hiding in these are dense woods, obviously, because he was out there for 7 hours. Dang. Hiding and running and trying to get help. Yeah. And he recounts that they were like yelling after him, telling him to stop and like that they were going to get him, all this stuff. I'm like, that would be, you're like getting hunted. Mm. How terrifying. And so for 7 long hours, Scott navigated the unfamiliar terrain. He was bleeding and in pain, of course, until he stumbled upon a house where, upon seeing his injuries, the residents called 911. He was transported to a hospital for treatment, and shortly thereafter is when he gave this testimony. And so he wraps up this whole story, and the detectives don't even know what to make of it. Like, this is the weirdest thing we've ever heard. There was no robbery, no car theft. Scott had just been lured into the woods and shot seemingly for no reason. And frankly, the testimony was almost too wacky to believe. This type of stuff just never happened in their county, as they all say, even though Ohio, maybe. But
probably.
Yeah, but without any motive, it's hard to imagine why someone would just go out of their way to lure in a man like this.
Yeah.
Scott told him that he still had the email from the job ad and that the details matched what he told them in person. And so investigators pulled his phone records. They got a court order to access the Craigslist account that had been posted online for the job. And that's when things kind of started to trickle into place. Kind of. The email had been accessed with an IP address tied to a home in Akron. Why do I always do that? In Akron. And this wasn't the only time it had been used. And so as police dug into the Craigslist messages and emails, a pattern began to emerge. Several men and women had, like over 100, had applied to this job offer.
Dang.
Seemingly, this person only would meet up with men, and only a handful had met up with him in person.
Yeah, that's weird because it's like, why men? And they're not like doing anything to him other than just shooting him right when they get there.
Right.
So why do they care if it's an older man? They probably have some weird thing with older people, or they don't feel as bad because they're also old men.
Yeah. And that's kind of what the detectives were thinking. Like, why such a niche group of people are you trying to gather together? Why these men? Why are you even doing this in the first place?
Yeah.
I don't know. And so all these questions are coming up, and they really were just trying to figure out who was even posting these ads to begin with. One of those men who had responded to the email was David Powley, like we talked about, whose body had been found weeks earlier in a shallow grave.
So they can see everyone who's responded?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they're connecting them all?
Mm-hmm. Investigators compared notes and realized that David had also told family members he was traveling to Ohio for a caretaker job. So that's how they're finding out, like, he was in communication with this person, and he told his family he was taking this job. And so it was the same pitch, same setup, and the ad was not just bait, it was literally a trap. Mm-hmm. Now loaded with, like, this new evidence as it was unfolding, investigators turned their attention to the digital breadcrumbs left behind. The Craigslist ad that lured Scott had been posted using an email account accessed from that specific IP address, which investigators were able to trace to a very specific residence. So, of course, they book it out there. Upon arrival, they met the homeowner, Joe Bias. He was cooperative, but surprised by the visit. He was questioned about the recent murders and was adamant that he had zero involvement.
I wonder if they just use his farm because it's big. It's like...
This residence is not where the shooting was.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just saying, like, if you own a farm?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the wooded area was just a big out in the middle of nowhere, and then the house that the residence was at this Joe Bias's house.
Where's the farm?
I don't know. Middle of nowhere. Noble County. Somewhere out there. But it seemed like it had been a drive. It was not like they were neighbors type of thing.
So that house is where the IP address...
The house is where the IP address, exactly. When presented with the evidence that the IP address literally led them straight to his house, he explained that he had a tenant renting his basement, a man he called Dutch. Joe mentioned that Dutch had access to his computer, his internet, his connection, and this information, of course, piqued investigators' interest as it aligned with the digital trail from the postings. And so, like, okay, if it's not Joe, we got to meet the downstairs neighbor. With Joe's consent, authorities searched the basement apartment. Downstairs, it looked like someone had been living light. There was only a few bags, a mattress, some clothes, but something just didn't add up. Inside, they discovered various items that raised red flags. They had prescription pill bottles, personal documents, and other belongings, all labeled with the name Ralph Geiger. This discovery led investigators...
Is Ralph dead?
Ralph was the very first person missing.
I wonder if they steal their money and stuff, too.
Yeah, so Ralph Geiger. This discovery led investigators to question the true identity, obviously, of the tenant. Mm. Joe confirmed that Dutch was, in fact, a nickname for his roommate, who actually introduced himself as Ralph Geiger.
Oh, snap.
After finding Ralph Geiger's name on the items inside this home, they ran Geiger's identity and discovered that he had been reported missing from his family. At first glance, investigators were like, we found the missing guy. Mm-hmm. Like, here he is. And then they ran Ralph's
they didn't
file.
Find his body?
They never found his body. They ran Ralph's file, and it flagged immediately. He was reported missing months ago, last seen heading to a job opportunity.
In Ohio.
In Ohio.
On a 688-acre lawn.
On a 688-acre lawn.
I mean
farm. He told his friend that he'd be working on a farm. Nice. The connection was obviously... It was the exact same story. So they couldn't just ignore that. Detectives reached out to the county coroner, where weeks early, a John Doe had been discovered in a shallow grave, not far from where Scott Davis was shot. It was still unidentified at this point. So they pulled the dental records, and without a surprise, they got a call, and the dead body found in the shallow grave was Ralph Geiger. So now this whole case is shifting. Do you have your thinking cap on?
Yeah, so they're all three dead.
We have all three dead. The first three people we discussed.
Documents in the basement of Ralph.
Mm-hmm. And Ralph was the one who identified himself or Joe said his neighbor's name was Ralph. Mm-hmm. So now the case was shifting. They're trying to put the pieces together. The man living in Joe Bias's basement, or the man who called himself Dutch, who the man who called himself Ralph, couldn't be either. And so they were able to pull fingerprints, and the real identity came back as Richard Beasley.
Okay.
How terrifying for Joe, being like, who the heck is my neighbor downstairs?
Why didn't he kill him?
That's a good point.
He just kills in that same spot. Feels comfortable with.
Well, you see, Richard, he was 52 years old. He had a long criminal history. He had drug trafficking, weapons possession. He was a pimp for a short amount of time. He did everything. And he was currently out on bond. He had been the one who had murdered Ralph Geiger. He had been the one who had taken his identity, and he was the one that was using Craigslist to lure in unsuspected victims. He wasn't just hiding in plain sight. He was straight up hunting.
That's so weird that it's like, it doesn't, I don't know. It just sounds more like he just wants to kill people rather than like any type of like sexual sadism or you know, spree killing or anything. It just
like, why does it seem so random?
Yeah, it's just like wants to just kill people, and the easiest way to kill them is lure them to a farm. Right.
As we'll find out as we continue, it seems like the reason he's killing this age group is he wanted to take their identity. So he's also 54. He's trying to find men his age that he can acquire all their things. So it seems as though it's identity, it's the money.
Because he's trying to probably run away.
Right.
I see. That makes sense now. Mm-hmm. Well, why 3 people?
That's a good question. I was like, that's a lot.
I like doing this.
He's like, wait, the first one was, yeah, that's what it seems like. So it's like he only took the identity of the first guy. Obviously, he could only take one identity. Yeah. But he did take like the little money that the other 2 guys had. It didn't seem like a robbery because not like they had much on them. They're going from nothing. So it almost does seem like an enjoyable thing, as bad as it is to say that.
Who's the nephew?
Right. As investigators unraveled the identity of Richard Beasley, of course they were like, who is this 16-year-old kid that was hanging out with him? Like, that's kind of creepy.
Probably not 16.
Well, the quiet, tall boy who had accompanied him, Jack, Dutch, Ralph, Richard, on the day of the attempted murder, he was cross-referenced. So they cross-referenced the digital footprints from the Craigslist postings, and it led them to a residence in Stowe, Ohio, where a 16-year-old boy, Brogan Rafferty, lived. The reason they're able to cross-reference is Brogan was just as involved with responding to emails, responding to the calls to align when they're meeting at the restaurant, when they're going to go out to the farmland. So he was very much online communicating with these guys in order to set them up to meet Richard.
That's weird.
It's weird. When authorities brought Brogan in for questioning, he initially denied direct involvement, yada, yada. We hear that every time.
I didn't do anything.
Yep, classic. He says, "I didn't shoot anyone, sir." That's his quote. However, as interrogation progressed, Brogan admitted to being present during the incidences and assisting in the aftermath. The example being digging a shallow grave.
So, conspiracy, or whatever it's called, after the fact. maybe.
Yeah.
Or attempt. I don't know what it's called. I'm not.
We'll take that out. He revealed that Richard referred to the men they lured as candidates.
Whoa.
Creepy.
Candidates for him to take their identity.
Right. He described how Richard would select victims by their responses to the fake job ads, considering them suitable targets for his scheme.
Whoa.
So by the time prosecutors...
So it is a scheme.
Yeah.
So he's trying to take their identity and their money. Even though he's kind of targeting the wrong people that don't have any money.
Right. They're like, oh, you need a new start? You have nothing?
That's probably why he has to do it so much. He's like, shoot, I only got $50.
Yeah. I mean, that's a chance. By the time prosecutors laid out their case in the winter of 2022, so it's been a year since the last murder, they had no doubt that Richard Beasley wasn't just a killer. He was a man literally trying to race his own past, race himself. Facing multiple felony charges, like we said, the drug trafficking, the prostitution, the weapons, all these things, Beasley had every reason to fear prison. He didn't want to go. Makes sense. And he was out on bond where the walls were closing in on him. In a recorded conversation with a friend, he told him that he is going to have to disappear. And so this is what he was trying to do.
Recorded conversation?
Yeah.
Why was that recorded?
Maybe if they wired the friend.
Oh, weird.
Or maybe the friend visited him in jail. I don't have the access to that. And so that's what he did. And that was the seed of the plan, really. The murders weren't just random violence or robbery gone wrong. They were logistic. Richard needed a new identity. He needed cash to survive and a way to stay hidden. And he found all three of these things in the men that he were hand-picking.
Yeah.
In the courtroom, the evidence was staggering. Victims had been carefully selected through Craigslist ad, which I sent you the Craigslist ad. Would you just read? This is your time to shine. Read just like the top paragraph, whatever of the ad.
Yeah. All right. Excuse me. Caretaker position for farms, Southern Ohio. The ad says, simply watch over a 688-acre patch of hilly farmland and feed a few cows. You get $300 a week and a nice 2-bedroom trailer. Someone older and single preferred, but we'll consider all. Relocation a must. You must have a clean record and be trustworthy. This is a permanent position. The farm is used mainly as a hunting preserve, is overrun with game, has a stocked 3-acre pond, but some beef cattle will be kept. Nearest neighbor is a mile away. The place is secluded and beautiful. It will be a real getaway for the right person. Job of a lifetime. If you are ready to relocate, please contact ASAP. Position will not stay open. Include name, age, phone number, and email, please.
Thanks.
That's kind of like
crazy.
Spooky hearing certain things. Like a hunting ground is like, it's his hunting ground.
Yeah.
And
he's like, it's a mile away from the neighbors. This is a
permanent
place.
Perfect distance. Yeah, permanent place is creepy.
Yeah, it's like reading
Clean
it.
record and trustworthy.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Coming from him.
Yeah, well, he wants that because he wants to take their identity.
Yeah.
And have a clean record.
Yeah, so it's crazy reading it back with hindsight, being like, ew, like he literally was like trying to find the perfect person to take their identity.
Yeah.
And just the setup is so eerie now looking back at it. So once they replied, these people for the job, Richard and Brogan, the 16-year-old, would engage them in polite, hopeful emails, scheduling the interviews, making small talk, gaining the trust. And so they worked together. And then came the drive to the woods, then the graves. And this plan was just all put together and running all too well for them until Scott Davis got away. Mm-hmm. Prosecutors also peeled back the layers of Richard's relationship with Brogan. Obviously. Like, what's this 54-year-old doing hanging out with a 16-year-old? The boy had known Richard.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, creepy. The boy had known Richard, or how he called him, Chaplain Rich, since he was 9 years old.
Chaplain Rich?
Mm-hmm. And so they had met at church. And Richard had been taking Brogan to church with him for many years at this point. So they spent a lot of time together. He fed him stories about morality and loyalty and fear. Brogan...
Groomed him a bit.
What?
Groomed him a bit.
Exactly. Big time grooming. Brogan's home life was troubled, which is so sad because it's like it's always a troubled where they're vulnerable and they're looking for like a mentor. And Brogan's mom was a crack addict, very unavailable. And his dad worked really long hours and he was almost never home. So it kind of put him in a position to raise himself. And so when Richard came around offering mentorship and taking him to church and teaching him all these life skills at the same time,
He's just trying to do good.
Right. He got sucked right into it.
He's like, oh, this guy didn't help me be better than my parents.
Right. And Richard even referred to himself as a spiritual mentor for Brogan, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
In his recorded testimony, when Brogan was talking about this to the investigators, he said, quote, "He told me these men were bad people and that they didn't deserve to live." And that's so sad.
Yeah.
And so he just is under the influence that he's doing what's right. But the jury didn't buy the innocence angle because Brogan had helped dig the graves and he had watched it happen multiple times. He didn't run. He didn't tell. In fact, as you pointed out, for some reason, everyone who murders feel like they have to write about it. I feel like you talk about that every episode.
Have to do what?
Has to write about it. Like, why are you guys putting that in your journal?
Oh, yeah.
And Brogan was a writer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's great for us. In his computer they found at home, he had written like a poem
About killing people?
about the first murder.
That's weird.
Very creepy.
About Ralph?
Yeah. It was, I'm going to give you a little glimpse of it. This is the beginning and the end of it. It says, "We took him out to the woods on a humid summer's night. I walked in front of them. I dug the hole. I reached to my waist, and when I was in, or it reached to my waist, and when I was in it, maybe 4 feet wide. We put them in with difficulty. They call them stiffs for a reason. We showered him with lime like it was a baptism, like we were excommunicating him from the world."
Jeez.
End quote.
That sounds scary.
Terrifying. And so this is read to the court, and they're like, okay, he's not some innocent groomed. Like they dropped that pretty fast, thinking he's aware of what he's doing.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, never mind. Keep going.
Okay. It was obvious that Brogan was aware of how serious the situation was and how involved he had become. The fact that he was scheduling the appointments and participating as much as he did, it didn't look good. When the scene while the teen sat with investigators, a manhunt was unfolded in Ohio. At this point, they don't have Richard in custody. They just know who he is.
Oh, yeah. They just went to his place.
Yep, they went to his, exactly.
They never talked to him.
Mm-hmm. So they have a name.
I wonder how, like, if he knew. Like, they're after me.
Which is funny you say that because they had the name, they had the location, they had Brogan now. Brogan couldn't communicate with Richard. And what changed all this is that Richard made a very big mistake on his part. Great for us. Unaware that his former roommate had actually been cooperating with the police, so Joe, he had literally called and left Joe a voice message along with a callback number saying like when he's going to be home, just nonchalant roommate stuff. It was casual, unassuming, but it was exactly obviously what the police needed. And so like, oh, great, here's his phone number. He's going to be back at 2:00. We'll meet him there. And that easily they were able to
nab him,
trace him, and nab him up. When officers moved in, he tried to run, but he didn't get very far. And he was tackled, arrested, and taken into custody.
Good.
The man who had tried to vanish into someone else's life had just walked back into his own in handcuffs. So the trial went on from 2012 to 2013. And it kind of went like this. So we had Richard's trial first. Richard Beasley faced multiple charges, including 3 counts of aggravated murder for the deaths of Ralph Gager, David Powley, and Timothy Kern, as well as attempted murder of the shooting of Scott Davis. The prosecution presented compelling evidence, including Scott Davis's eye testimony, like real life testimony. Yeah. That's what's nice is like you have a witness that's like, that's exactly who the guy is.
Mm-hmm. this is how it happened.
Right.
This is the proof that they were the ones doing it.
Exactly. And it's not like a classic eyewitness where I saw something outside my house at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, he had
In
lunch
the
with
dark.
him first.
Yeah.
Like, they are communicating. Like, yeah, exactly what you're saying.
This is the phone number I have.
Exactly. Exactly. So literally there's like no doubt that it's Richard. He recounted the same testimony that he gave the officers in the beginning about the job, about the remote wooded area, which I haven't told you, I add. This is literally the most random wooded area ever. It's not a farm. It's a random slot of trees that they took him to, saying it was farmland. There was not a house there. There was not anything to tend. It was wooded, dense area just to lure them into the woods.
That's crazy.
Terrifying.
Yeah, they just... I mean, it's probably something where they just say farm to get them in there. And
Exactly.
like, Ohio has so many farms, they believe it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the description, it's talking about like how much it needs attention and how dense these woods are and stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes sense also, like, not to have your own house right there. But it's just creepy how well thought out this all was. Unfortunately, it worked a few times.
Yeah.
And obviously, the jury found Richard guilty on all counts. During the sentencing phase, the jury recommended and the judge imposed 3 death sentences for the aggravated murder charges.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Richard was also sentenced to additional prison terms for the attempted murder and other related charges, which it's always interesting to me when they just pile on like 3 death sentences and other prison charges where it's like, if you just got one, that would do the deal, you know? But it's crazy how they do it for each individual victim, which I like.
Yeah, I think it also helps that they're trying to appeal something. They're like, there's like a bunch of things to have to worry about.
True.
Just one. What about, also something I was thinking about is he just had some charges that were probably not great, and he had to go to jail for a while, but he decided to kill people, and now he's getting a death sentence.
Yeah, seriously.
Stupid idiot.
I feel like that's always the case. Or you hear like people murdering over instead of getting a divorce. Yeah. It's like, really, you weren't allowed to get a divorce, and so you thought murder was the best thing?
Yeah, or you wanted to save like half of your money, so you kill him, and you're like, well,
now all your money's gone.
You're going to jail. Yeah,
it's just crazy what people do out of desperation. Logic literally just goes out the window.
Yeah.
As far as Brogan Rafferty, who was only 16 at the time of these crimes, he was tried separately as an adult. And they tried to get him to testify against Ralph. And originally he agreed to lessen his sentence. But I said Ralph, didn't I? Of Richard. And before Richard's trial, Brogan actually backed out and didn't testify against him.
Dang.
So, I know, same. I'm like, yeah, he definitely is a bad guy.
He's a psychopath.
Yeah, yeah, that guy's crazy. I'm innocent. For sure. He faced charges including aggravated murder and attempted murder. And Brogan's defense argued that he was manipulated. Groomed. Right. And how Richard acted as like a father figure and all these things. But like we said, with the amount of involvement Brogan had in the murders and with the creepy letter that was on his computer, it just fell on deaf ears. Yeah. They did not care. The jury found Brogan Rafferty guilty on all counts. Due to his age at the time of the offenses, he was ineligible for the death penalty, but he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Just at 16 years old.
Yeah, that's sad.
That's so heartbreaking. It makes you wonder, like, how different things would be if he grew up in a different environment. Both trials highlighted the calculated nature of the crimes and the exploitation of vulnerable individuals seeking employment. The courtroom proceedings brought closure to the victims' families and underscored the dangers of online scams, which are becoming more and more real. With AI and stuff, I'm like, everyone's getting spammed left and right. Yeah. Which is funny because I feel like our generation and lower gets that. Mom will send us like the most obvious scam text ever and be like, look out for these. It's like, obviously. Yeah. But the older generation doesn't know, as they didn't have technology their whole life. So definitely a tale of caution. In his closing arguments, the prosecutor held up a photograph of one of the victims and said, quote, This man believed he was walking into a new life. Instead, he walked into his grave.
Dang, that's sad.
Richard Beasley didn't even flinch. Sickening.
Yeah.
When the courtroom doors finally closed, 3 families had buried their sons, brothers, fathers, and another had watched their teenage child vanish into the prison system for life. And one man, Scott Davis, walked away with his life, but never without the memory of how close he came to losing it.
Yeah. Trauma and
Survivor's guilt, in a sense.
And probably doesn't trust anyone ever again.
Oh my gosh. He's like, I'm never using the internet. He probably threw that computer right out.
Yeah.
The Craigslist community tried to react pretty swiftly. And like the platform has always kind of been criticized for like the lack of safeguards and how it's like kind of sketchy. Mm-hmm. And this is actually like when I think it wasn't until like 2018 that they took down the personal ads of like dating and stuff. But they tried to implement tighter restrictions around job postings and began working more closely with law enforcement with these things. In Akron. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I was like, for sure it's not Akron. Okay, in Akron, the story became a cautionary tale told in schools and coffee shops, remembered not just for its horror, but for the simplicity of its setup. Jeez. These weren't like drug deals gone bad, anything extreme. These were just ordinary men looking for work. We have David Powley, Timothy Kern, and Ralph Gager, and their names faded from headlines, but not from memory. And somewhere in a maximum security prison, we have Richard Beasley, who's still sitting on death row, waiting his execution, and his prodigy, Brogan Rafferty, now well into his 20s, would never walk free again. In 2013, he did like one interview, and he said, I didn't shoot anyone, but I'm just as guilty.
Oh, at least he knows.
Yeah, at least he knows. Through it all, one thing is clear, that when desperation meets deception, the cost can be your life. Mm-hmm. And this is the case of the Craigslist Killer. Whoa. But I just thought it was so creepy how he took Ralph's identity, how he just like went through all this trying to get away from the law just to get the death sentence. Yeah. Ugh, I hate it. Anyways, interesting, crazy story, and who knows where they're at now, but sounds like
still there.
They're still there. Yep. Do you have any not so fun facts for me today?
Yeah, so we're going to go through true crime facts related to the online world. Number 1, so romance scams cost victims over $1.3 billion in 2023. Many scammers
in 2023, that much?
Yeah.
Billion.
That's what it says.
That's insane.
ChatGPT, sometimes wrong.
Probably close enough. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. That's wild, though.
Today I asked ChatGPT something about the Airbus, and they said, so for managed descent, pull. I was like,
wrong.
Wrong.
Dang it. Yeah. I hate when it's wrong.
I'm not going to relook at this then.
That's true.
Many scammers use dating apps and social media to emotionally manipulate victims and steal money.
That's so scary.
Number 2, the dark web is home to over 2 million criminal listings, including drugs, weapons, and stolen data. But undercover FBI stings have led to a dozen major takedowns.
Dang, that's crazy. That'd be an interesting job.
Yeah, I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, maybe I should look into some like cybersecurity stuff.
Yeah, it's probably smart. Brett is so good at that stuff.
I get calls every day saying that like I'm approved for a loan.
Really? Brett's passwords are like 30 numbers long, and it's like XYZ189. It's like random crap. Yeah. I'm like the same password across the board.
Yeah. I feel like scammers can get you no matter what.
I know, you gotta be so careful.
All right, the Facebook killer in a case in 2017 shocked the world when Steve Steffens broadcast a murder on Facebook Live, promoting debates on how social platforms handle violent content.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's for science.
Yeah, it's spooky. So.
Ew, I hate that.
Do you want a couple more?
It's up to you.
This one's sad. I don't know if this one is true. It sounds way high. I'm going to skip that one. Cyber stalking is now one of the fastest growing crimes. With over 1 in 4 stalking victims reporting They were harassed via the internet or electronic communication.
That's so sad because that's like one thing that never gets taken seriously to the full extent.
Yeah. Ransom software attacks increased by 95% in the last 5 years, targeting hospitals, schools, and entire city governments, often demanding cryptocurrency payments.
Dang.
We kind of had that with Dad's computer.
Yeah.
That was sad.
That's heartbreaking.
And then...
all your valuable stuff.
Yeah. Catfishing led to real-life tragedies. In 2012, a case of Notre Dame football player Manti Te'o, whose fake online relationship became
I forgot
a
about that.
scandal.
I remember that. That's so sad.
Yeah, that was
so embarrassing.
Sad. Yeah.
That's so sad.
That's all we have for today.
That's crazy. So be so careful online. Verify everything. Be smart. Be safe. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Siblings in Crime. Bye-bye.
Bye.